Hello and thank you for joining us. My name is Ben Sheen. I'm one of the managing editors here at Stratfor, and I'm joined today by our VP of Global Analysis, Reva Bhalla. And today we'll be talking a little bit about Stratfor's final forecast of 2014. So Reva, moving into the fourth forecast of 2014, there's been certainly a lot going on in the world. A good place to start seems to be the ongoing negotiations between Iran and the United States over the nuclear issue.
Right. Well, November 24th, I know a lot of people will be watching that. What we caution, though, is that this is not the make or break for the U.S.-Iranian relationship. So they're down to the technicalities in this negotiation, but as we talked about in our last week's video and in our ongoing analysis, the foundation for this negotiation is still very strong. So regardless of whether or not they actually seal the deal on November 24th, the negotiation will continue. There was no expectation on our part that this negotiation would result in a comprehensive deal that would actually wholesale lift sanctions in any significant way by the end of the year. There may be some short-term obstacles, but still, this U.S.-Iranian working relationship will endure.
Now, the working relationship between the US and Iran, that stretches beyond the immediate concerns about sanctions and nuclear capability for Iran into the Middle East with the Islamic State issue with Syria and Iraq.
Certainly, yes. And that is a common interest that even if on the surface the U.S. and Iran keep up some hostile rhetoric, there's, of course, a very common strategic interest between the two in the containment of ISIS. And what's going to be more interesting to watch, I think, in the quarter is as the U.S. has been trying to get the regional powers to handle a lot of this burden. Certainly, Iran has already been getting involved, remobilizing Shia militias in Iraq as one example to try to contain the threat. Now Turkey is being pushed to get more involved. Turkey will still be more constrained, but as Turkey is pushed to get more involved, it's that Iranian-Turkish competition that we'll be watching very closely in the Iraqi Kurdistan region in particular.
And obviously there are implications as well, naturally, within that part of the world for oil production. And we've already seen a drop in the price of a barrel of oil. And that's implications for economies such as China. And obviously everyone's looking at Hong Kong at the moment, but is that really where we should be looking?
Right. So with Hong Kong, this is, in the near term, this is certainly grabbing a lot of attention, but we don't really see a contagion effect taking place onto the mainland. In fact, the mainland really looks at Hong Kong as a spoiled brat. And so there is a bit of a disconnect there. Now, in China, really, the big problem is that, whenever China needs to rebalance the economy, especially the property sector, which is loaded with issues, it always tries to pump just enough credit to keep everything afloat. And then when things, risk a bubble bursting, they also withdraw credit when they need to. And that's worked for a very long time. The problem that we're seeing now is that the pumping of credit into the economy is not having the same effect that it used to, which makes sense given the slumping economic conditions that we see in China that they're grappling with now. So as that gap widens between the policy and the action, that's where we're really looking closely at the potential for localized property crises, which are then in turn wrapped up into local debt and government crises. Really the key thing here, though, is that this is still localized. We do not expect yet, certainly not before the end of the year, a systemic nationwide crisis. But this is really the problem in China to watch.
And obviously China isn't the only major economy that's having perhaps issues at the moment. We've just had the Russian budget drop, and it's been a really intense period for Vladimir Putin, who, as well as dealing with domestic issues in the Kremlin, has had to deal with the ongoing issue between Russia and Ukraine, and then further on with Europe.
Yes, I mean, this really hasn't been an easy time for Putin. But as we see with the budget battle, Russia is making very important decisions, and Putin is prioritizing defense. It's prioritizing its state champions in the economy, and they're drawing down on their reserves to make sure that they do cope with the economic stresses from sanctions. But overall, going into this quarter, Russia is in a much stronger position. And this is something we did expect. With colder weather on the way, the European countries are going to be looking out for their energy security first and foremost. And Ukraine, even with all the reverse flows you have from Slovakia currently, Hungary has cut off, but Poland as well, that's still a very small amount. Ukraine cannot make it to January without a deal from Russia. Russia knows that. So they can sit back and wait for the Ukrainians to bend in this negotiation. And on top of that, on the battlefield, we see Russia also having regained its advantage. So this is the process of Russia essentially neutralizing Ukraine.
So certainly Ukraine is going to be under a lot of economic stress moving forward. Where else in the world are we looking at that's also seeing significant economic constraints?
Well, certainly, of course, in Europe, right? It's a very stubborn crisis, and we're seeing the political ramifications come into play. And you'll remember, we've been laser focused on the Franco-German relationship in particular.
Yeah.
This is the foundation of the European Union, and it's the most important relationship to watch. And as we've seen in the past quarter in particular, the stresses that are growing on France are giving it a lot less room to maneuver when it comes to dealing with Germany. So France is becoming ever more bold, in its statements to Germany, saying, look, we're not just going to follow your mandates anymore on our economic policy. And of course, Paris has to balance those stresses at home. Now, Germany is going to be very important to watch in this coming quarter as we see the ECB trying to put pressure on Germany to encourage more investment, to allow more stimulus measures. The debate over QE goes on, but Germany is becoming more and more and more reticent, naturally so, as countries continue to miss their budget deficit targets. So this is really key here. We can't forget the political pressure on Germany in particular and the constitutional crisis that will intensify as a result. And already we see institutions within Germany resisting further QE measures. So that is certainly a constraint that will play out in the coming quarter.
Reva, thank you so much for sharing your insight today. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. I strongly encourage you to read Stratfor's fourth quarter forecast, publishing Monday, the 6th of October, and you can read that on stratfor.com. Thank you.
Thank you.